everyone, welcome to today's video. Today we are going to talk about encryption algorithm, server-side encryption, client-side encryption, in-transit encryption. We'll be also talking about symmetric and asymmetric encryption. Finally, we'll try to understand what is a brute force attack in encryption. Let's start. So let's say you have a letter called hello, right? And this letter, hello, how are you? Or maybe one more sentence, how are you? What you want, you don't want this message, okay, to be read by anyone else except your intended recipient. So you are sender, you are sending this plain text, right? This is a plain text. You are sending to your friend, let's say John, right? John is the receiver. So when John receives this text, actually he don't receive in this format. He receives a format, a scramble format, A, C, D, X, Y, exclamatory, something like this, okay? That's how John receives, which is not, no one can read actually this one, right? So how do you do this? So to transform this, we do something called, we do a transformation, we do scramble it using some form of methodology, right, which is actually named as encryption. So encryption is nothing but a way to scramble your data so that your opponent, except your recipient, no other people can read that out. So how John can read this one? Because John knows how you have actually encrypted. So now here is a second point, that how do we do the encryptions, right? So we use some methodology to encrypt. That method or methodology is named as encryption algorithm. Right? When we use this algorithm, we use some form of key, right? We say that key name is encryption key or cryptographic key. So what is encryption key or cryptographic key? You can think about it as you have your house, you or a box, you want to send a box to your friend. Before sending this box, what you would like to do, you would like to lock this box, right? So you are locking this box by a lock, okay? You are locking it. So when you lock, you use a key, right? You use a key to lock this box. So then you ship this box to your friend, right? If he need to open this box, he actually need that key, right? So encryption key is nothing but a cryptographic key which uses encryption algorithm to lock your data, right? Lock your data in a plain word, but it scrambles data using the algorithm. Now your other part, or your recipient or receiver, he also need to have that key in order to read that out. So in simple, encryption key is something which helps you to scramble the data using the encryption algorithms, right? Or encryption mechanism or methodology, whatsoever you name it. Now this takes us to our next topic, which is what are the types of encryptions available, right? So in a regular world, right, in our world, in a technology world, right, there are few things to remember, few things we need to understand here. So we have, if we think about a client server architecture, we have a client, right, a computer, right, which is, we are naming it client, and we have a server, right? We may be having a database server, application server, or whatsoever. So that's our server. Now if you encrypt your data in the end of the client before sending it to the receiver, right, to your server, if you encrypt here, this is called client side encryption. client-side encryption. I'll just say EN. And then the data you were sending, this data will be staying here as a log data, right? So that's perfectly fine. So if you use a key, encryption key EK1 to lock it, if someone would like to unlock this data from this server, they also need this key called EK1, encryption key 1, right? Now let's say another client, he don't have mechanism to encrypt it. I'm just giving an example in the client side. So he's sending a plain data to your server here. This data is not locked, it is unlocked. Okay, this one is locked, this is unlocked. Now if this data is here, now this is not secure, right? So what you have to do, you have to encrypt this data, and in this case you are encrypting in the server side, so that's why its name is server side encryption. Server side encryption. Now there is another thing which need to be addressed here, which is called encryption in transit. So when this data on the flight, right, traveling all the way along to your application server, right, the data is traveling over the internet, right? So we use a protocol HTTPS or HTTP, right? HTTPS. So HTTPS is a secure shell protocol or TLS protocol, transport security layer protocol. So we use this HTTP protocol to transmit this data. So if I would like to secure this data over the internet, and then I need to use HTTPS, right? So which is actually this type of encryption is called in transit encryption. So we have learned three terminology. One is client-side encryptions, in-transit encryption, and server-side encryption. Now we are using here only one key. We just showed that EK1 and EK1. That's the encryption key we are using to encrypt. According to different encryption algorithm, we use one encryption key, and sometimes we have other options to use two encryption key, right? So using one encryption key and two encryption keys. So if I use one encryption key, this is called symmetric encryption, and if I use two encryption key, this is called asymmetric encryption. Asymmetric, you can just say EN, right? So this is based upon how many keys we are using to encrypt. So there is only one key. You use same key for encryption and also for decryption, both, right? And for this one, asymmetric, where we need two keys, you have one public key and one private key. You use public key to encrypt and you use private key to decrypt, right? So if you encrypt a data in a client side, I will write a short name, client side encryption, CSE, you use your public key. And to decrypt, you are going to use your private key. Your recipient going to use private key. So that is in simple symmetric and asymmetric encryptions, and asymmetric uses public key and private key combination. For symmetric encryptions, we have something called AES. right? Advanced Encryption Standard. And then we have something called 3DES, okay, Triple Data Encryption Algorithm. And for asymmetric encryption, we have something called RSA, and then we have something called elliptic curve cryptography. Elliptic curve cryptography. Here is our last topic, which is brute force attack. Okay, so what is brute force attack? So you have your scrambled data, right, or encrypted data, right, and you use an encryption key to decrypt it if you want to get the meaning of hello, right? That this scrambled information has something called hello. So if you want to get that, you need an encryption key. So what is brute force attack? Brute force attack is an attack by a bad guys to identify or to run a various combinations, millions and millions of combination of this key to find out the right key. So they are trying to assume what is going to be your key, and if the key, and they are going to, let's say they are going to create 100 combinations of the key, and then they're going to try to decrypt it. Over times they create and try, and one may adjust. So to do that, we actually have now powerful compute mechanism. So it might be sometimes possible, if your encryptions are weak, if your encryptions algorithms are not that complex, there is a chance. If your passwords are weak, this brute force attack can happen as well, with any sorts of your credentials by bad guys, right? So I hope at this point of the video we are all in a good shape. We all understand what is encryption is, why we need encryptions, and did I talk about why we need encryptions? Very simple, right? It's about your privacy, your data privacy, your security, your data integrity, and definitely about authentication, about regulations. So there are regulations like PCI, there are regulations like HIPAA. They require you to encrypt your data within certain condition, either from the client side, nor in transit, nor at rest. So these are all reasons why you must have to do encryptions, depending on what application you are handling, what type of data you are handling, who is your client, or what is your intended activities, things like that. So you need to identify all these factors and determine when you need to do encryption. But this is something always you need to keep in your mind when you work with data. So thank you very much. Thank you for joining.